All right, there we go. So again, want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Once again, my name is Matt Panzano. I am one of the directors of chapter development for Delta Upsilon. I was a volunteer as a facilitator for about 12 years before I came on staff. And before this job, I was actually a high school teacher in social studies for about a decade or so. So very excited to be working on staff. We have an amazing team, and I would go out to say that we are one of the most innovative in the field based on how we approach a lot of the situations that we encounter on a day-to-day basis. So, as I was telling some of the people before, as we go through the agenda here today, this is an open session, so please feel free to unmute at any time. If you have any thoughts, concerns, or even scenarios, you say, hey, I've been advising this undergraduate, they had this situation, how can we apply this to what you're talking about tonight? And we'll all brainstorm together and help you out, right? Because that is the whole purpose, in my opinion, of these advisor webinars. So our agenda tonight, redefining the word failure and understanding that failure is actually the first step to success. A lot of our undergraduates that I work with struggle with this idea, and we'll go a little bit more into why that is. Talk about what I call the failing forward model. So this is just something that I've whipped up over the years. It's not necessarily an original design. It is based on this element called design thinking. So for those of you out there that may be engineers, I'm sure you perked up and got very excited when I said that. But we will be talking about the design thinking model a bit as well, because we do actually use design thinking in Delta Upsilon in some of our programming. I also want to give a quick plug for the Delta Upsilon Emerging Leaders Experience. We also call it Dual. I'm sure a lot of you already know about Dual. If you've never heard of it before, even better. We're going to just take a quick second to go over all of the different detail of that program, how it benefits our undergraduates. And finally, we really have to talk about what are the next steps, right? So you're an advisor. How are you now going to utilize what we've been able to talk about tonight, whether it's from the presentation or, in my opinion, the best professional development is going to come from all of you, right? So the fact that we have very experienced advisors here. Dave McGuire joined us. Dave, how long have you been an advisor now?
50 years.
So a little longer than I think most of us, right? So, Dave is a plethora of knowledge as well. So, we were just talking about how let's share these ideas out. And if you have, again, scenarios, you've been working with an undergraduate, this situation came up. Let's see if as a group we can talk you through that and figure out a great solution there. And then, I always want to leave time at the end for best practices, right? So if you have something that you like to exude from the chapter you advise, let's get it out there on the floor. Like I said, I'm not an expert in all things. However, I think as a group collective here and as brothers, really, right? Everyone has this opportunity to share their personal experiences and advisors. So we'll leave time at the end for that. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into redefining failure. So understanding, what the actual definition was, I had to go look it up. So I went to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, and this was the first definition that popped up: a state of inability to perform a normal function. And the key word that stood out to me there was the word normal, because normal assumes that there's this one linear universal way of accomplishing a task or solving a problem, right? I disagree with that. I feel like there are multiple routes to the top of the mountain, so to speak. However, with my experience as a high school teacher and now on staff, one element that has stayed the same is this fear of failure, right? Fearing the first step. I work with a lot of chapters that are associate chapters. So I oversee all of the associate chapters in their journey to becoming a chartered chapter. What we have to work on when I make these on-site visits, the first thing we work on is recruitment, number one, and especially their 60-second elevator pitch. Well, that part you would think, okay, well, maybe they're good at sales, depending on their background, maybe they've worked before, but no, the first step is always just going out there and saying, hey, are you looking to get more involved on campus? But even the most confident guys that I've met before, they fear that first step, right? There's a couple of possible causes here. And this is some of this is based on research, and I'll be honest, some of this is based on my experience as both a teacher and on staff. What we've seen an uptick in, and when I speak to a lot of undergrads, and I say, hey, so how did you make your promotional materials for Rush? And they say, well, so we threw some stuff in Chat GPT, and I don't know if anyone else has this when you're advising undergrads, right? ChatGPT is a tool, just like anything else. It's an AI tool. However, because it is going out of its way to take the first step for a lot of our undergraduates, especially when it's coming up with speeches, materials, how to bolster a resume, right? This idea that technological dependence is going to save them from having to make the first step, or that they can nail it in the first try, I think is one of the reasons why we have a lot of this, we'll say, discontent when things don't go the way that they hoped that they would go, right? I can also tell you as a teacher, there was a severe lack of accountability overall with a lot of the students that I taught. And so that was either not happening from parental oversight at home, or to be honest with you, and I love some of my colleagues, but some teachers just wanted to be the cool teacher. I was not that person. I disciplined when I needed to. But when you don't have accountability, when students are constantly getting away with X, Y, and Z in high school, that is now the audience that is our undergraduate uh, audience, really, right? So if we're looking at what they're accustomed to, they don't have to be held accountable. So how can they receive feedback when there are no consequences and they're not being held accountable? So we have to start teaching them how to receive the feedback as much as watching how we actually give that feedback, right? And then, of course, you have the perfectionists. Uh, I like to pick on my future wife. She was in the IB program. Some of you, I'm sure, were also in the IB program in high school. IB program demands excellence, right? It's an almost perfect world. And so, with all of these demands that high school students are under now, and then coming into the undergraduate level with inflation in the job market, depending on what field they want to go into, it's almost like they feel like they have to be perfectionists, right? The funny part, though, is they can only become closer to perfect if they can take that first step, right? So we have to have the ability to build that relationship with them, which was one of the other advisor webinars we did back in November, how to build that relationship to gain the trust to then help them take that first step, right? I think it really can come down to reframing how we define failure. So, two very, I would say, adamant definitions I found. The first one, a temporary state where the most valuable lessons are learned. And hasn't that been the case for everybody, right? Where, yeah, maybe we did something in our job, right, in any capacity that we do, and suddenly we know how to do that thing better. But also, the process of transforming knowledge into wisdom. And I always used to tell my students, knowledge is knowing that the oven stove top gets hot. Wisdom is knowing not to touch it, right? So when we have this idea of knowledge, and I'll use a fraternity example here, a lot of young men tell me they know how to recruit. They know that they need to table. They know that they need to go on campus and go to the dorms and go to the dining halls and have the events where people come. Okay, so they have that knowledge. The wisdom is knowing when to actually schedule these events, where to actually put the table, where to actually go and do these activities that they're saying. Also, who to speak to. Can you get a time slot reserved at the volleyball court at 2 p.m. on the most efficient time on a Friday versus just knowing that if you go to volleyball, you might find some people. So we really have to help them understand, here's the knowledge that you may know absolutely. I'm possessing the wisdom that's going to get you to that next step, right? So I'm just curious, we'll stop for every point here. Does anyone have any thoughts, questions, scenarios you want to throw out early on? And if not, we'll just keep chugging along here. Right? Okay. So please don't judge my failing forward model too quickly based on the visual. I tried my best, but I think that this is simple enough that anyone could learn, any undergraduate could pick this up and just run with it, right? So when we're talking about failing forward, there are really 4 steps that you have to look at. And if you're familiar with design thinking and rapid prototyping, this is going to sound very familiar to you, right? But the first one is we have to double down on failure. We have to fail fast, fail often. So if you have a new philanthropy event, your chapter is trying to do a new philanthropy, uh, what I would suggest to them is break that into the smaller logistical parts that need to happen for that event, right? So scheduling the venue, getting the materials, do this, do this, do this, and split those up. And I would do trial runs of every single logistical part of that new philanthropic event to make sure that when it's game time, we know that it's going to take a week or two to get those flyers back, or that the venue wants you there 30 minutes early so that you can set up, right? I use that one example because that just happened with a chapter that I've been working with, right? They had to do a trial run, but let's test it multiple times. Let's figure out where to go. The second part, I think, is very crucial as well. However, I do not have the most confidence in our undergraduates to be able to summarize all of the lessons that they learned from failure. And it has nothing to do with an intellectual factor. I think it has 100% to do with organization, if I'm being totally frank. Organization, and from an undergraduate perspective, myself was not the most organized person. Teaching forced me to do that. So we really need to be able to not lecture our younger members of how to organize, but we do have to listen to what feedback are you gathering? How are you gathering that feedback? And how are you summarizing all of that into a new idea, a new plan that we are going to test out, right? I think a lot of times we'll do building better men retreats, for example, and we'll get feedback, in the chapter we'll say, oh man, we loved when Matt came in, he was very engaging, he taught us these new strategies. Okay, so then the follow-up question I have, what feedback did you summarize from what I gave you, and how are we now using it and measuring those metrics? Because they also are not measuring the metrics. They're just telling us, well, yeah, no, recruitment's going great. It's going great. Yeah, we got a couple of guys, it's going great. That doesn't show us the metric. We need the solid numbers. And in order to do that, it's also on us to show them what we're looking for. So that when we get to step 3, what I call test and tweak, now we've tried out a lot of different ideas. Now these are the tiny adjustments, right? So we need to get there 15 minutes earlier. Okay, that's not a big deal. If we're doing a recruitment technique, I'll give you an example from a chapter I worked with. They were tabling, they went right out there. People were going to get lunch, going to get Subway. They would jump right in front of them and say, hey, you want to join a fraternity? And I watched that and we said, okay, that may not have worked the way you wanted it to, because the person you jumped in front of and quite frankly scared, they were just going to get a sandwich. They're not ready to make a life commitment. It's 12:30 in the afternoon. Can we rephrase this to say, hey, are you looking to get more involved on campus? That's a more open-ended question after you start saying, hey, I'm just looking to see if our interests align here. But those small tweaks are what I mean when I say test and tweak. And then you test out the new, smaller idea instead of the new, larger idea, which then hopefully will come together as the plan that will work, whether it's a philanthropy, whether it's a service event, recruitment event, anything to do with the men of merit standards that we go after. So even finances, I've helped chapters get out of debt using this. What fundraising methods are we using to get ourselves out of debt? All of that to say, by the time your chapter gets to the evolve stage, they should have spawned 2 or 3 new ideas from the original idea. And we're going to take those 2 or 3 ideas and run that through the whole circuit again. And test that out, tweak that, and see what new ideas spring. But it goes back to that first step. How do we inspire our undergraduates to take that first leap to do step one? And I'm going to just shut up for a minute because I would love to hear from the crowd, the advisors here. What have you done to inspire your undergraduates to take that first step? If anyone wants to come off of mute and share your thoughts. Or not. It's okay too. Uh, but I think if we're all looking to how do we help the undergraduates to have that confidence level, then I'm glad you're here because this is an excellent session for us to talk about. So I'm going to move on then. Design thinking in DU. I'm not sure how many of you know what design thinking is, but the whole idea, if you don't know, is that it's based around a user that you sort of create out of thin air. You try to put as many details and emotions into this user so that you understand and you can empathize with what they're seeking. So this is pretty cool. We do this at our dual academy. So the Delta Upsilon Emerging Leaders Experience, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. And what they're supposed to do during dual, I just saw this happen this year. I didn't realize we did this until this year. I haven't volunteered for dual yet, but they're given this idea of the shopping cart. And our facilitators will say, okay, your job in the next hour is to create a user, give that user different emotions, different, passions, everything from hair color, eye color, everything. And then we want you to redesign the shopping cart based around their needs. So think about all the people you've seen in the grocery store lately, right? So you have the young teenagers, they just got out of high school. You have the mom that has maybe the stroller going on, or dad with stroller, right? So they have a young child and they're trying to balance both. How can we redesign this? And the designs, I'll tell you, that they came up with were incredible in an hour. But there was a key element here that I wanted to highlight. It was that no idea was a bad idea. No idea was a bad idea. So they were able to take the shopping cart design and say, okay, what if we did this? What if we tried this? What if, and they were able to ask this in a judge-free zone, which I think is so important, right? Part of that fear of the step of failure is they're going to be judged for their idea. But what if we had a team that said, okay, let's try this out? So what they ended up coming up with was close to something like this, where if you see some of the elements here, there's no longer one large bed. There are 2 separate lines for all of these crates. The crates are now what you use for food. You have a scanner up here that can help you scan the items as you are picking them up. And the idea behind that was that you could eliminate the long checkout lines, right, with your cart full of goods. They redesigned the handles here. So normally you could have this little, top shelf, put the infant in there. Uh, Up here, they have an actual infant seat based on a car seat, and they redesigned the entire shopping cart. I say that because within 1 hour, without any limits, our younger brothers were able to create plenty of new ideas. I think we had 7 different prototypes of new shopping carts, and every single one of them had at least one element that I thought, wow, imagine if the new shopping cart had that. I was stunned, right? Even the wheels, right? Going different directions. You could move them sideways, parallel park if you need to. So all of this to say, how has your chapter, and you don't necessarily have to answer if you don't have this yet, but how has your chapter, the one that you advise, or multiple chapters, some of you do overtime, which we thank you for, rebranded, reformatted, reformed any of their practices in the past year in the same way that this shopping cart was redesigned? And again, if we have any ideas, I would love to hear from you. If there aren't any, I do have one I would like to share. But would anyone like to share any new practices their chapter has tried? All right.
Hey,
Oh,
hey Matt, this is Quinn Ryan from Carthage chapter in Kenosha. Um, I didn't want you to have to just keep talking at us the whole time here. I don't know if I have much to contribute outside of just saying I think one of the big reasons that I'm here today is just revitalizing the ideas I have as I go to them. I mean, I think that they're in a rebuilding session. I'm wondering if other advisors are feeling the same. I think um, I think a lot of the young men that we advise, I think their biggest challenges right now are they are coming, at least what we're finding is they're coming out of a COVID situation where like a lot of institutional knowledge was lost by not being on campus for 18 months, which seems like a short time period for those of us that are adults in careers. Like that snaps by for us, but for that and for them, I mean that you might as well have said they were out for a decade with the amount of turnover that they have. So I think this is encouraging in terms of just we need to start rethinking this idea of like pretending they are starting at square one, right? They're not necessarily even starting from a position of understanding what the chapter even needs them to do. So again, I think all of this is very apropos and it's perfectly timed for thinking about how they're going to carry us forward for the next, for the next decade. But yeah, the guys have needed a lot of encouragement to just ask a simple question, which is why are you doing what you're doing? Because a lot of them are doing things because they think that's what they're supposed to do. I'm dealing with a group of guys right now who's having they're planning their formal, but they don't have anything formal happening. So there's no formal dinner happening. There's no awards being presented. They're just going off with each other, hanging out, doing a thing. And I'm like, well, what's the purpose behind this? So I think that was an opportunity I thought about to fall forward a little bit here. Is like, hey, you're calling it formal. Why? Because there's nothing really formal about it. So walk me through your thought process. And it's, like you mentioned, it's a judge-free zone. We're not judging you for what you're doing. You think you're doing the right thing, but just walk me through that thought process. So I think we have to do that a lot more going forward, which is just starting at a base of just walk me through your thoughts. Like let's tackle this. So anyway, sorry to sorry to drone on a little bit there, but
no, I love it
yeah,
all.
happy to
Thank you.
listen. Yep.
I love that idea. And thank you for sharing that. That's a perfect example of, and to your point, why are we doing this just because we were told that's the way it's been done? And do we even question how we're approaching, right? Uh, when I was an undergraduate, my chapter did the same thing, right? And it was just, how do you keep up with that, right? Uh, so let's see. Anyone else? Thank you so much, Quinn, for that.
Matt, Dave McCord.
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, there, we say that we are coming out of the pandemic, but there's been a drastic change in the educational environment. Uh, I wear a different hat from time to time. I'm a college trustee, so so I'm on a governing board of a college, and we are faced with a generation that is coming out of a thought process where we're using cell phones to function with. We don't read our emails. If it's 1 or 2 points, I can deal with it. If it's more than that, I don't read that far into the text or to the email. Uh, if I hear the phrase one more time, we've always done it that way. I'm going to bitch slap one of them. uh, the you hit the nail on the head when you said your collective history has been lost. And now the advisors are faced with how do I rebuild that and in what method? Because we're not going to do binders, we're not going to do file folders, we're not going to do all the things that many of us learned when we were involved or we have done it 10 years ago. So those are the challenges you're faced with. Now, how you get around them is what we're trying to figure out now. And I watch faculty try to deal with it. I look at college staff try to deal with it, and it is a frustrating experience, with the exception of a few bright kids that pop up and actually get it. Uh, I work with Bruce Peterson, and Bruce, I'm calling him out also on the line. Bruce is a former dean of students, so he has a very big insight as to a lot of how to deal with students. And it is a case of where it is different now than it was before. How do we as advisors adapt ourselves to their new functioning style? How do you communicate with your chapter? Well, we send it out over the group me. Okay, that's a one-line text that expects everyone to respond, but they don't. But because they didn't respond, that's how we're going to go forward. There's a multitude of different things that we're going to have to adapt to. I've spoken enough, but those are just a few of the thoughts off the top of my head.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much, Dave. And to your point, you know, it is frustrating on both ends, right? It's frustrating for, I'm sure, the faculty to have to adapt, right, to this new audience. I think a lot has been mentioned about COVID, not just tonight, but by a lot of chapters, right? We have members that were freshmen when the pandemic started, and now they're seniors. And there was such a dependence on, right, technology for communication during that time. I'm not sure how many people pulled out of that, but I love what you said about the group me. That is a prime example right there. If you don't know what group me is, you're already behind the communications curve, and therefore you cannot help some of the undergraduates, depending on which chapter you have, because that is just the latest, greatest thing. And next month it will be probably something new, right? And that's the rapid pace we have to go at. I love that depending on how we communicate with our chapters, this model is always possible, right? If we took, for example, communication as the main theme for design thinking, and we said, okay, redesign the Delta Upsilon communication method, right? And it's actually great because at Dual, which, if you guys don't mind, I'm just going to go to the next slide here to talk about Dual. At Dual, they are given this task, and the next task after the shopping cart is they have to redesign the DU experience. So it's this paralleled mirror, right, of now that you've done the shopping cart, apply the same factors to your chapter specifically, right? Or just to Delta Upsilon in general. How can we change the fraternity experience to be more user-friendly for, we'll say, this post-pandemic undergraduate, right? Because that's our user. That's the person that we are trying to market to when we recruit, when we're trying to get them to fundraise, right? So I think it's very important, and this is a great exercise. If you want to follow up after this, I'm more than happy to share how I've run this process. I've worked with this process for about 10 years now. So happy to share my notes on that. For those of you that don't know too much about Dual, I won't spend a lot of time on this. However, I will say that this is an atypical program. I've been to conferences at this point for Greek organizations, and I can honestly say I don't see many other fraternities at all doing something like Dual. So I'm very proud to say that. And that's to my point at the beginning of the presentation. I said we have one of the most innovative teams, and this is one of the reasons why. It's geared towards freshmen and sophomores mostly. You can have juniors and seniors attend, but really this is geared towards those younger leaders in your chapter that you can see that think outside the box, that aren't necessarily just going to go with the flow on every single aspect of the chapter and never question, to Quinn's point, why are we doing this the way that we're doing this? We want to look for people that are thinking outside the box, that are going to ask that question, that wants to improve and progress their chapters and won't settle for the status quo. And the best part about this program is that there are no registration costs, unlike how we have the Regional Leadership Academy and the Leadership Institute, right? Because we will cover the president to attend President's Academy and reimburse their travel. This one, because of our DU Educational Foundation being able to raise so much money, and also from a very generous brother by the name of James Graham, we are now able to host 2 of these experiences every single year. It used to only be once in the summer, and now we're able to host it twice a year. The only thing undergraduates need to cover is their travel cost, right? They do get to go to, in the summer session, Williams College, and actually visit the original campus. Now, for those of you that know your DU history, you know that the actual building at Williams College isn't exactly standing anymore. There are parts and bits of DU just scattered around the campus, but it is cool that they get to go to the original spot. For those of you that were here for the 175th LI, I know I was here. I know Dave was here. I'm sure a couple of you were also here. That was a very cool experience to get to go to. You also see on the picture on the right, they do a lot of team building activities and thinking outside the box for those types of team building activities. They then take those and go back to the chapter and can teach the entire chapter, hey, why don't we do this, right? So that we can start thinking outside the box. But more importantly, a lot of participants in Dual, they are a little bit afraid to step into the process. And the facilitators will tell them that at some point during that whole process, they are going to fail, and that's okay. And so I thought this is a perfect program to tie into tonight's theme, because Dual is all about failing and tweaking new ideas to bring back to your chapter in that judge-free environment. And with the design thinking element, I think that's what separates it from everyone else. So if you're looking for future exec board members to get training on how to approach any issue, doesn't matter if they are a specialist with finances, recruitment, doesn't matter, philanthropy, whatever, this is a great program. If you do want to nominate an undergrad, there is still time. The deadline is May 3rd. So we're taking nominations up until then. And essentially at that time, our educational programs team will reach out to those undergraduates and say, hey, you were nominated for Dual. We have a spot for you. Are you interested? And if they say yes, they just have to, like I said, fund their travel. If your chapter that you advise happens to have a CEA, those funds can be used for the travel as well for any undergraduates too. So just wanted to do a quick plug there. I also told the ed programs team I would, but I honestly love this experience. And ironically, it is the one program I have never facilitated as either a volunteer or staff. But one day, I told Noah Borden, one day I would like to do it. So has anyone done Dual? Has anyone facilitated Dual? I was just curious. Maybe not. What? With that being said, talking about next steps, and we've shared some great ideas so far. I didn't want to be too specific about different categories at first, but let's get into specifics about how we can apply this failing forward mentality and the model to our chapters. So first, we have to create that environment I was talking about, that judge-free zone. That is a must. If you cannot help establish that with your undergraduates, and really what I'm saying is you have to be able to teach them how to teach the other brothers how to do it, right? Because as advisors, and I was a former advisor as well, we want to step in so many times and just say, hey, you know, this is how you do a formal, right? And just give them the checklist. Here's the blueprint right here. But we can't do that. If we expect the growth, if we want them to actually develop their character, we can create the structure, the environment that they need, but we can't get involved directly with every aspect. So what does this look like? I love to throw this in to most of my presentations. Your opinion really does matter. And whether or not you've worked with students, if you work in higher ed, if you've worked in K-12 like myself, you may or not know this, or if you have children of your own, I'm sure you know as they get to the teenage phase, right? I hate you actually means, oh, I love you, Dad, right? So your opinion does greatly matter. And some of our undergraduates are not very expressive with that, but what you say has weight. So if you say, if you're setting up a judgment-free zone, I'd love to hear your ideas. That is going to matter so much to them. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that, right? So undergraduates in this judge-free zone, as I said, in 1 hour, we had 7 different designs for a shopping cart. Imagine how many different designs we would have for the next philanthropy, the next service event, the next semi-formal or formal, right? The next road trip. Anything that they desire, let's run it through the model, right? And let's see how many of these undergraduates can generate ideas. To your point, Dave, about the technology, I actually love this part. I have the brothers stack their phones on the table and I split them into groups. I do this for Building Better Men retreats and for on-site visits when guys just need a little bit of teamwork building and recruitment training, whatever we're doing. But I split them into groups of 3 or 4. I have them put their phones in the middle of the table. The first guy to grab their phone has to buy the rest of them lunch that day. And we all agreed to this rule, and no one has ever argued with it. So just throwing out ideas, trash or treasure, but that's how I organize them to start thinking like this. And then we go through the acceptable timeline. This is such a crucial part of this whole experience because in their minds, I'll use recruitment because it tends to be a hot topic. In a lot of people's minds, undergraduates specifically, the only time that they can ever recruit is rush week. That's it. So they have these 5 days, or sometimes they have 2 weeks. So they have these 2 weeks in the spring and 2 weeks in the fall. So you're telling me out of the 12 months out of the year, we're only recruiting for half a month or a full month out of the 12. And so, Quinn, I'm going to keep stealing your line. Have we questioned why we're doing what we're doing? So let's rethink this. Let's run it through, and I'll do different groups that have rush events that have never been done before, right? And then we take those rush events, I flip them. Now they are weekly brotherhood events that you can just happen to invite potential new members to. And that's how we do the trial and error. We do it for a couple of weeks and we say for this entire month of April, we are going to run these events and see if they work. On Tuesdays, we're doing this. Thursdays, we're doing this. I say recruitment because at this point, a lot of people think, oh, there's only 1 month left in the semester. Why try it? Well, because now is the perfect time to fail. If it fails, whoop-de-doo, right? But now we understand what is effective, what is attracting potential new members that we may want to recruit in the summer or in fall. So I would put a challenge out there to the advisors here. if you have an idea, despite whatever the timing may be with the undergraduates, I would challenge them a bit. I'd push back a little bit and just say, uh, time is relative, right? What if we just tried it just to see what would happen? There's really no consequence here, right? Because if the guys aren't going to join right now anyway, they might join in fall. Why not try out some of these ideas now? Maybe they'll enjoy them, right? So create that environment where no idea is a bad idea. I also like to use the phrase yes and instead of yes but, right? So the example there, if you give me a great idea and I say yes, but, well, now I've just dismissed your idea. If you say, hey, I think we should start at Tony's Pizza for the night and then go to Top Golf. Yes, I love that. And let's see if we can search, maybe we ask the guys, do you like to golf? Maybe they like bowling better. I love Tony's Pizza. Let's add to that. So if we have that model of yes and versus yes but, you would be amazed at how the simple word switch changes the whole dynamic, right? Number two, and again, by the way, feel free to unmute at any time. I'll just keep going otherwise. But number two, helping undergraduates process failure and saying to them that piece that we talked about earlier, there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing the oven gets hot. Wisdom is knowing not to touch it, right? How do you do that unless you failed? We've all failed here. We failed many times. That's why we're successful. That's why we're able to give the advice as advisors, because we have failed. And in order to help them process failure, one of the best strategies, in my opinion, is to empathize and tell them a tale of your failure. Because they look to you. Remember, this first line, your opinion matters greatly. If they see that you've failed, and whether or not you've used the failing forward model, I'm sure you've used some part of it, right, in your ideas and how you're growing them. But they need to know that you can fail as well, because a lot of undergraduates idolize their advisors, right? Because you're the ones that came before. You are the gods of that chapter. You are the legends that made this story. It happens, right? And I'm flattered by my own chapters sometimes. They say, "Oh man, I remember when you single-handedly saved 9 puppies." No, I didn't even save one puppy, but I'm glad that you think that. They talk these tales up in their minds. Let's use that if we can. Also, what feedback is useful and what isn't? I don't know if your chapter has this problem. With my larger chapters that I tend to advise as their chapter liaison, 160, 180 man chapters, there can be, a lot of negative feedback that is clouding the constructive feedback. So almost like we have to sift through the sand. Let's figure out what is useful, what is not. Undergraduates may or may not understand how to sift and how to separate what is constructive versus what is negative, right? And for the negative, we also may need to teach them, hey, if someone's always coming to you with negative feedback, let's challenge them a little bit, right? We're in Delta Upsilon. We are men that develop character. If you have negative feedback, brother, I would love to hear a new idea that you have that you would like to contribute, right? So we're turning that negative into a constructive by just saying, well, I didn't like this. However, I do have this idea. And I also feels like that helps seal the bond a bit amongst the undergraduates, especially if they have, a civil war situation, different sects have broken out, different cliques have broken out. It's happened many times, right? It's just part of the cycle, but I think that can help with the healing as well. And again, being vulnerable, not a bad thing. Being able to say, we have failed as well. But this, going back to our very, very first slide, organization. Organization is not exactly the strong suit of the new generation. And again, has nothing to do with anything with intellect, nothing to do with that. I think it does have to do, though, going back to that technological dependence, There is so much information available at so many times, so much, so fast, so quickly. Where are we storing the data? Where are we putting the notes? For the Building Better Men retreats, I have giant postage sheets I'm putting up on walls, and I'm saying to them afterwards, where are you putting this? Especially if you don't have a chapter facility, if you don't have a house, where are you putting this? Is this going in someone's dorm room? Please don't throw this out. This is valuable stuff, right? It's also expensive stuff, so don't throw it out. But what's written on there is very valuable. I would love to hear from the crowd here. How do you help your undergraduates to organize their thoughts, and or if you want to share how you help them process feedback, either one, but really organizing their thoughts is the key here. Any thoughts, any ideas of how you help them?
Matt, a suggestion that we came up with a year or so ago is to create a chapter shared drive. It's a Google device, and we set it up using a master account so that it's not tied to one individual. And that's key. If you're going to perpetuate this from year to year, I always tell the undergraduates, I may not be here tomorrow morning. So who's going to be the person who carries it forward? So we have a shared drive, and it's tied in with the university. So there's going to be some semblance of continuation. Uh, but it's like most shared drives, they get a little unorganized, but that's what we encourage them to do. Put your documents up on the shared drive. Uh, have each officer with its own set of folders. Put things on the shared drive so that the other members of the chapter can see it. Uh, tie the shared drive to a common chapter calendar so you will always have the history of what the chapter did from semester to semester. And it's not an answer to all the problems, but at least it gives them something to work with. A frustration will be the number of undergraduates who function from their cell phones. And cell phones are wonderful devices, but it's hard to get the concept of an entire document just by looking at a cell phone. Uh, I have a standard policy that I will send someone something in an email, then I have to send them a text message to tell them to read their email, and I limit the email to less than, well, I try to keep it at 3 bullet points. More than three, and they're only going to see one or two. It's just the nature of the student you're dealing with. And some of these people are incredibly intelligent and they're very nice individuals and wonderful individuals, but they've been taught that that device in their hand is how they function. And I hear faculty say the same thing. You don't have a textbook. They're reading their assignments on a cell phone. They write papers on cell phones. That's the type of thing that you're going to be dealing with going forward. And as an advisor, you're not going to be able to get them to change back to the old systems. We're not going to be back in binders. We're not going to be back in notebooks that we keep from office to office, but we have to have it in a medium that they're going to use on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Absolutely agreed. I laughed when you said the text after the email. I do that with a lot of my chapters as well. And imagine that the way of the telegraph is dead, right? So it's now multiple forms of communication, going back to that element, to keep everyone organized, but not just organized, but also accountable, too, to make sure you are reading this idea, this thought that we are trying to advise you to do. And that's one of the hard parts about being an advisor, right? I use the phrase trash or treasure very often because I feel like that helps to lessen the pressure of my ideas onto an undergraduate. I also think it's a different appeal from when they see my little staff name tag and they think, oh, well, the IHQ guy saying this, I feel like we have to do it. No, I'm just trying to give you advice, right? And as advisors, same thing, right? I'm not saying you necessarily have to do this, but you're going to feel a lot less stressed, and so am I, if you do it this way, right? Or at least give it a shot. But thank you, Dave. No, that's a great point, and I love how you also mentioned it can't tie to just one person. Officer transition is where we lose so much of that institutional knowledge every single year. So how do we preserve those ideas, those thoughts, and not just, again, let's just do the same thing as we did last year, but what are the notes that we took to reflect on how well that philanthropy event went? How much money did we raise for GSI? How many people did we recruit from this rush week based on those new events that we tried, right? What are the metrics? So, any other thoughts on organization or how you give feedback? So, if forgive me here for being a little cheesy, but I love our ritual. It is one of the parts of Delta Upsilon that has kept me around for so long, and the staff will sometimes know that and poke fun at me, and I'm totally fine at that. It's all in good fun, but I do get a little preachy with our rituals sometimes. But if you know this phrase, then you will know that it is from Rite 2 of Initiation, right? Together enables to live bravely amid the discouragements of life, seek to acquit ourselves like men, and continue to believe in the best, even in the face of failure. It's almost like men of the past, over 100 years ago, even if we're going to use that, knew about the failing forward model, and that we are about building better men, not perfect men. And we need to remember that as we advise our undergraduates. They need to understand that it's okay not to be perfect. Again, we build better men, not perfect men. And so, because we've left so much room for mistakes to happen, for failure to occur, it's even in one of the lines of our ritual. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming for why Delta Upsilon, I feel like, is one of the best equipped, if not the best equipped fraternity to handle failure and to process. If you look at the list of esteemed alumni that we have on the website that a lot of our undergraduates will reference for recruitment, how many people do we have in the industry that created the next new innovative wave of an idea? I remember back to Ed Renzi. For those of you that were at that Leadership Institute, I think it was 2009, 2010, around there. Ed Renzi, former CEO of McDonald's, talked about how he really pushed for the McMuffin. And that was his hill he was going to die on, was the McMuffin. We have to get more into the breakfast industry, and look at it now. The McMuffin has spawned so many other breakfast items, the breakfast burrito at McDonald's, the McGriddle at McDonald's, right? So all of these other innovative ideas that followed the failure model and ultimately became other new, better ideas, right? And so I think if we even reference people that we know, whether they're famous on the website or not, but just brothers that have tried various ideas in the past. I think that is one of the key elements to why we want to be advisors, we want to help, is because we know that this is not easy. It is not easy to lead your peers in college. And at the same time, it is very easy to be able to share an idea with the right environment. So we want to be able to set them up where failure is a good thing. And however you choose to do that, I would love to hear, even after these sessions, I always love to hear feedback from advisors. How are you applying what we discussed, what other people had given as ideas? How did that turn out in your chapter? So, with that being said, I'm just going to open it up here for any questions, any scenarios in particular that your chapter that you advise are running through. Maybe we can help as a collective, or if you have a best practice from anything that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. So open the floor. Anyone, feel free to unmute and share. And it's okay if we don't have anything either. I also know it's a holy holiday today, so I think that's why we had a lessened audience, but we'll throw it out there one more time to see if anyone wants to give a last minute thought, questions. Maybe give me feedback. How'd I do? What would you like to see in the future as a topic? Anything of that nature?
I'd like to say thank you. I think more people probably need to see this. I certainly would like to share the PowerPoint if you don't mind, even with the undergrads, because I think in that full disclosure and no secrets, I think it's good for them to know what our thought process is as advisors on their behalf. So yeah, again, thank you. I think this one is incredibly important for our fraternity as a whole, especially as I do feel like there's been a lot of institutional knowledge lost. So just rebuilding that thought process on how we can continue to improve, because we should always be striving to move forward. So I appreciate it, and I unfortunately don't have a ton to add, but I really do appreciate the content. So keep it up. I think the last two have been great. So yeah, I wouldn't change those for sure going forward.
Thank you. No, that really means a lot. Quinn. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
And I think, we are going to put this recording up on our website. If you would like the actual Google slide presentation, if you want to send me an email, I have no problem sending that out, or just sharing that with you. It's, we're non-secret. It's not like this is rocket science. I will say again, I didn't patent that failing forward model. I just sort of made it up as we went. So that's not based on any historical research, but it is based on the design thinking element. And I know, Andrew, you just joined us, so we're just sharing best practices and any questions and answers at this point about anything to do with the chapters that we advise and any new ideas that either they've been too afraid to try because they don't want to fail, or they have tried, they have failed, and we're just discussing how that went. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything there.
Um, right on the spot, not jumping out at me. I'd say not too much has actually been tried and failed. It's more of the failing to try part.
Gotcha. No, and that's fair, right? And I think that's been the common element of tonight. Sorry to put you on the spot, man. I really didn't mean to
It's
do
okay. No, it's fine.
that. We know each other pretty well. So at the end of the day, you know, getting them over that fear of taking the first step, right? I think that that's the key element here. I also think that when we're setting up environments where there is no judgment, and again, anyone can express their idea, no idea is a bad idea. Now we're starting to see innovation, right? We're starting to see that progress happen because there is no judgment. And to Dave's point, we'd said this multiple times, the fact that there is a dependency on technology to some extent. Look, we all do it at this point. I check my phone probably more than I should in a day. I wish I could tell you it was all work related, but sometimes I'll start something work related, and then suddenly a notification pops up that my March Madness team has once again, my bracket is destroyed, right? So we are all guilty of this. And I say this because, for any undergraduates that will watch this, understand that we're not trying to analyze you like an anthropological armchair type of scenario. We, as the advisors, as the coaches, we're just trying to understand what does help you, what does work, and let's use that design thinking model that was discussed earlier to walk through the empathy that we need to understand as advisors to know what you need, right? That's the ultimate goal. Is everyone here, we're all brothers. We want to help. I say that some of you may not be members of Delta Upsilon. I think all of us here are, though. So just making sure, though, we're leaving room for feedback, both to give to the undergraduates, but also to receive, because like I said, they're going to come to us next month. Probably Group Me may be a thing of the past next month, and now it's going to be Group You, and that's the new app, and We Group, or whatever the next one is. And we have to keep up with it. But yeah, so any other best practices, questions, thoughts, concerns, scenarios you want to run us through? And if not, I am going to just say thank you very much, all of you, for taking this hour to be with us here. Like I said, this recording will be available probably next week, I would say. Tomorrow is an office holiday for us, so we will not be in the office. But on Monday, our Senior Director of Communications, Ashley, will be uploading the webinar. So if you do want to share this with undergraduates or other advisors, please feel free to do so. If you would like a copy of the slides here as well, just shoot me an email. It's just my last name, Panzano, at deltau.org. And I'll actually just go ahead and throw that in the chat really quick, just so you have that here. .org. All right, perfect. So thank you all again very much. I know some of you are celebrating this weekend, Good Friday tomorrow, Easter on Sunday. For those of you that are celebrating that, I do wish you a happy holiday weekend. For those of you that are not celebrating that, I wish you a great weekend anyway. And thank you so much for all that you do. We greatly appreciate our advisors. And if you ever have any questions or there are topics that you would like to see at the next webinar, please feel free to reach out. We would love to hear from you. So thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. And have a great weekend. Thank you.